Well, the UK is being urged to resettle an extra 3,000 Syrian refugee children. The International Development Committee of MPs says it's concerned about children travelling on their own through Europe. The report notes that around 80% of Syrian children need humanitarian assistance. MPs on the committee say they're concerned that children who survive the journey may become victims of trafficking and potentially forced into prostitution or the drug trade. But the report does commend the UK government for its approach to the Syrian crisis, saying it provides the second highest level of bilateral funding to the region. Now, one of the authors of that report, Stephen Twigg, joins me now from London. He is a British Member of Parliament and the chair of the International Development Committee. Mr. Twigg, thank you so much for joining us. Firstly,
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
How did you reach the conclusion of the magic numbers, per se, of 3,000 refugee children?
So Save the Children Fund, which is a very respected development charity, put forward this figure last summer. And it's based at looking at an estimate of how many of these children there are in Europe and what would be a fair share for the United Kingdom to take. So the 3,000 figure has come from Save the Children. We think it is a realistic figure, and we're saying to the British government we'd like them to make a decision quickly and as a matter of urgency, because these are children who are at real risk.
Mr. Twigg, I'd just like to bring in our correspondent Francis Collings, who is on the Turkish-Syrian border in Gaziantep at the moment. Francis, after hearing what Mr. Twigg has just said, we've heard the number 3,000, but from someone who is on the ground right now, are people there thinking that this is an appropriate figure?
I think any figure is welcomed, is laudable, but the stark fact remains is that there are over 2 million refugees here, and there are some 400,000 children that aren't in education. We can draw the difference between those that are in the refugee camps, which are very much in the minority, who are being looked after and are being educated, but there are many who are not, who are simply outside the camps, some of them unaccounted for. And the situation in Turkey is that often children as young as 12 have to go out and work so their families can survive as a result of this horrific conflict that started nearly 5 years ago. So the situation here is very, very different to when it is boiled down to statistics. I mean, with great irony, Syria was a country that hosted 1.2 Iraqi refugees, which were as a result of the conflict in Iraq 10 years ago. So they're now in a situation where they're looking for help. And we wonder why refugees are leaving this country and heading in numbers even in the cold of winter. Well, the figures may speak for themselves simply because they feel the West is not holding out a hand to them and not really helping. 3,000, yes, it's 3,000 more than we heard of yesterday, but it really is a drop in the ocean.
Well, Mr. Twigg, if we can go back to you now and respond to what Francis has just told us. Does 3,000 really seem like, as Francis put it, a drop in the ocean compared to, say, the 2 million refugees that Turkey is taking?
Well, Francis is absolutely right to remind us about the plight of children wherever they are. And of course, many of the worst situations are those Syrian children who are still in Syria. And one of the things that we address in the report is the importance of the donors coming up with the money that is needed to support development work in Syria, but also to support Turkey and Jordan and Lebanon, who, as you rightly say, have taken massively larger numbers than those that are coming to the United Kingdom. So yes, the 3,000 figure is important, but it's one of a number of recommendations that we are making today. The United Kingdom actually has a good story to tell on putting funding in for the neighbouring countries and for work within Syria. And we're calling on some of the other European countries, we mentioned France in particular, but also other wealthy countries like Japan, who need to match the kind of commitment the UK has made so that there is more support for education, for food programmes on the ground in Turkey, in Lebanon, in Jordan, but also, of course, for those who are still within Syria itself.
It is a significant contribution financially, Mr. Twigg, compared to other wealthy nations throughout Europe. But as Francis was saying, many people there are saying that 3,000 just isn't enough. Is there any room to move on that? Why such a small number?
The 3,000 refers to unaccompanied children, children who are on their own and have made their own way to Europe. The United Kingdom government, of course, has already committed to taking 20,000 refugees from the region, and 1,000 of them have already arrived in the United Kingdom. And we've talked in our report today about the importance of the most vulnerable getting the support of the United Kingdom to come here. So, for example, those who may have disabilities that will be best looked after if they're here in the United Kingdom, those who may face forms of discrimination like LGBT refugees or religious minorities, including Christians. So the 3,000 would be on top of the 20,000, but I accept entirely that even 23,000 is quite a small proportion of the number that we're talking about, which is why investment to support those who are being looked after in Turkey, in Jordan, in Lebanon is so important, because we all hope, even after these 5 tragic years, that this conflict will come to an end and the families will want to return. I was in Jordan in October and went to the Zaatari refugee camp and visited a family living in a host community, and they all said to me they want to be able to go back to Syria. So the political process is really important as well.
Stephen Twigg in London, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.